Hello, my friends. I'm still on the road, still in India, still unable to have the best lighting for you. But notwithstanding that, I'm sharing some ideas again today with you. And today I want to talk about fundamental creativity to manifest anything you want, your deepest desires, fundamental creativity. So, a few things to share before I speak about fundamental creativity and the mechanics. Wealthy and wise life. But before we do that, we should talk a little bit about what is creativity. So, one thing very clear, creativity is not a function of the mind. The mind itself is a creation of that which is fundamental creativity. The mind is a product of that. The mind, however, is conditioned and seeks predictability. The conditioning goes deep, 40,000 years of human history and human storytelling. So as long as we are bound by stories only that we have inherited from our ancestors, as long as we are bound by them, that also is called karmic conditioning, then fundamental creativity is not available to us. Fundamental creativity means going beyond the conditioned mind, accessing the most fundamental level of existence, which is a superposition of infinite possibilities. I'll repeat, the most fundamental level of existence is a superposition of infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities means infinite possibilities. Nothing that you can imagine or conceive is excluded. Nothing, zero. And that is our fundamental level of being or existence. It is also a level of synchronicity. It is also a level that does not exist in space-time. It is also a level where there's proliferation of uncertainty. Now, this is very important. The proliferation of uncertainty is an absolute requirement for fundamental creativity. Anything that's certain and can be programmed into an algorithm is an extension of our intelligence. AI is an extension of our intelligence, but it is not fundamental creativity. The creation of AI, by the way, was close to fundamental creativity, the creation of AI. But AI itself is not fundamentally creative or conscious in terms of subjective experiences like hunger and thirst and sexual drive and the desire to sleep, to dream, or to have aspirations, or to have imagination. That's not an aspect of anything that is of the conditioned mind. Even imagination, by the way, is both kinds. One is a recycling of memories, and the other is going absolutely into our formless transcendent state and creating images from there that have never been created before. So fundamental creativity requires the proliferation of uncertainty, requires surrender to being, requires surrender to our natural state of existence. Elsewhere, I have mentioned the 9 steps, intended outcome, which should be experienced in consciousness at every level, the level of the tanmatras, which means subtle sound, subtle taste, subtle color, subtle form, subtle shape, subtle taste, subtle smell, subtle sensation or texture. It has to be intended at that level. The second is information gathering around the intended outcome. The third is information analysis. All this requires both mental work, but also transcendence. But now the fourth step, the third step, intended outcome, information gathering, information analysis. Yes, the fourth step. This is called incubation. And this is very important. Incubation means going beyond the conditioned mind. This requires transcendence. And once you transcend, you're not in the theater of space-time and causality. You realize even the theater of space-time and causality is a projection of the self, of that fundamental self. So it requires transcendence, it requires surrender, and it requires the proliferation of uncertainty so that non-local correlation can correlate what we call uncertainties into a coherent, correlated, organized form. But that requires going to the formless. Only the formless can create new stories, new contexts, new meanings, and new images, and new feelings, and new thoughts. That's what's required. So that creativity is new context, new meaning, new relationship, new imagination, and new story, a death and a resurrection. But very important, it requires surrendering to the proliferation of uncertainty. So then all these correlations come. I call this the conspiracy of improbabilities. And if you incubate with humility and surrender and uncertainty, then suddenly there's insight, inner vision, the aha experience, insight. You say, wow, that's true. Now, if it is really true, then that's not motivation, it's inspiration. When motivation is mental, inspiration, as the word suggests, in spirit, is spiritual. There's no going back. Inspiration then leads to implementation. Implementation leads to integration. Integration ultimately leads to incarnation. So death, resurrection. Let me restate the 9 steps: intended outcome, information gathering, information analysis, incubation, insight, inspiration, implementation, integration, incarnation. This is how we create anything, including a healthy and long life. Right now, I'm very involved in what is called the longevity experiment, and that includes not only a deeper understanding of signal molecules in the West, which include molecules that include self-repair and self-regulation of metabolism, but also incorporating Eastern techniques, including vagal stimulation, including certain yogic exercises and pranayama, a deeper understanding of yama and niyama and pratyahara. A lot of this is also in my new book with Sarah Finger, which is called Living in the Light, Yoga for Self-Realization. So all of that, you can manifest anything if you have access to the unmanifest. The unmanifest includes everything: archetypes, the imagination of our ancestors, and also the memory and learning of our ancestors. However, fundamental creativity goes even beyond that. It transcends every thought, every image, everything that we have conceived and thought of or imagined in the past, because it goes right to the heart of all creation, that which creates the experience of the entire universe. We have access to that. Atman is Brahman. And those are the 9 steps. And I can speak a lot about that. But what I would like to share with you as we move forward is how to change the metabolism of experience, including what we call the metabolism of time. As the Yoga Vashishta says, time is the consumer and we are its food. We are time's food, but we can go to that which is timeless and revisit our experience of time itself. And when we do that, we can use fundamental creativity for longevity and health span as well, or to manifest any other desire. So let's talk only in terms of not subconscious mind, supraconscious mind, just the manifest and the unmanifest. The unmanifest has several layers: mind, intellect, ego, and then Jivatman, then Atman, and then finally Brahman. And that which we call the universe is Brahman, the disturbed or creative state of the undisturbed bliss state, which is called Brahman. And because you and I are Atman, we have access to the creative impulse of the universe.